It's as good as it gets. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming out. And the great part is, because we're live streaming it, you can go home and then you can watch it again, which I know is what all of you are going to do. Let me pray for us this evening. God, thank you, as always, just for who you are, for what you do and have done, continue to do, promise to do in the future for us. God, we're grateful for this day that you have given, just the beautiful sunshine outside. God, I do ask that you would just continue to watch over this church and even guide our time here this evening. We love you. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, as I was thinking about tonight, and you can see on the green sheet I wrote a paragraph, and so you can read that, but just as I was thinking about tonight and kind of reflecting on some of the things that are contained in this packet, I will simply say that on one side, I think this feels like maybe the most frustrating year that I've had in the 9 years or whatever it's been that I've been here. Just frustrating from the standpoint, it feels like, as soon as we start to get a little bit of traction and start to what seems like make some progress, then something mostly COVID related happens, and we're back to kind of where we've been the last couple of weeks, and it feels kind of empty and scattered and people here and there, and so I don't know, it's been frustrating, and so I suspect you guys get that and understand that. Just know from my angle, it's been a weird year. And so with that, I guess one of the things that I've been thinking about and just reflecting on comes from Matthew 25. So let me just read just a few verses. We actually talked about this on one of the Sunday evenings a few weeks ago. But I think it's appropriate here. So this is the parable of the talents, pretty well-known parable that Jesus tells. And you understand there's a master and goes away to a different country and gives his servants differing amounts of talents. So just kind of pick it up and read a few verses. Now after a long time, the master of those servants came and settled accounts with them. And he who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 talents more, saying, Master, you delivered to me 5 talents. Here, I have made 5 talents more. His master said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. Enter into the joy of your master. Now, there's a lot that we could say about that, but I would simply point out this evening that one of the things I think that strikes me about that passage, and really I think is appropriate in terms of application even for us this evening, is that the servant was rewarded not so much for the amount of the increase as he was rewarded for, in the master's words, his faithfulness. In other words, the master said, look, you've been faithful with what I have given you. And I guess that's been helpful for me on some level. And has been my goal and even continues, I guess, to be my goal just as we kind of move forward in this kind of weird season that it feels like we're in. The outcome may not be as grand as we envision it to be. It may not be exactly how we kind of picture in our minds that things or ministry or just church life is going to unfold. And yet there are certain things that are beyond our control. Not beyond God's control, but beyond our control. And I think it's helpful that this servant and really the other servants are judged on their faithfulness. They're judged on what they do with what they have been given. And so I guess that's kind of my goal, and I think really maybe even the goal of the church, probably always, but more particularly during this time, that we would be faithful with what we have, that we'd be faithful with the circumstances, the situations that we find ourselves in. The reality is it doesn't look like it did 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And who knows what it'll look like a year from now. Certainly I don't. But I think as believers, in particular as a church in general, the goal is to be faithful with what God has given us, the circumstances and the situations be as they may. So that's just an opening thought. Would ask you at this time, you all should have a packet. Conveniently, it's color-coded. This was, I won't even take credit for it, but whoever did that was genius. You can see the green page on the front. That is the sort of agenda for our time this evening. And so would ask at this time, we're just going to pause. And if you have not already, would ask that you would take a glance or look over the minutes from our annual church conference, which was September 20 last year. So that should be the pink sheet. Because this is a formal business meeting and fulfills some of those requirements, it may be kind of clumsy, but look at it and then would ask for a motion, maybe just general consent that we accept them as written. So we'll just take a moment and look over those. Questions, comments regarding the minutes from last year? Harold continues to carry on the tradition. Then I'll just assume that by general consent that we're going to accept those. So the next order of business is the current financial statement, and then the that should be the 21-22 budget proposal. So Mr. Eggleston, you're up. Is there a cordless mic that you would prefer?
Yeah, that one.
This one?
Okay. We're gonna, in your packet, you have two documents, financial documents. We're gonna be working from those two. One is the statement as of, well, in your packets, as of July 31st, and I just handed out to the people present here the latest one that we have completed is August 31st. So I'll be talking about the one dated August 31st. I gave them. Okay. So a little bit about the form itself. I don't remember last year if we included the full year's columns, but there's it's pretty busy and pretty tiny. So lighting is good up here, so I can see what I'm holding in my hand now. So across the top, we've got some headings. The where you see the word income, that column is that shows the line item numbers and the description of the line. And then what we've always done is we've had the actual for the fiscal year, the budget for the fiscal year, and the difference of that year. And then we added two more columns to show the full year, which on month 12, which will be the ending of our fiscal year, which is September 30th, this month, those numbers should agree. But through the year, as we're working in church council, it's helpful to see how we are going from month to date or year to date. I'm sorry, and how does that look for the entire year? So it gives us an idea of if we're trending the right way, if we're going to be over, if we're going to be under, and just how that goes. So anyway, this is also broken down by groups. So you have staff ministry groups, then missions ministries. The staff ministries are in the 100 series. The missions show up under the 200 series. And then we have some building and equipment in the 400, and then service in the 500 level. So 2 other features of this report. You have right up in the very left-hand corner, you have a block that shows some summary values, and those values reflect the other totals or subtotals that are found in the report. For example, the checking and savings account balances and the designated totals show up in that column, and then I also show the available cash as well as those balances. And then on the far right, beyond the dark line, those are designated funds, and the designated funds aren't reflected in the fiscal year. They are continuous, so some of these funds have been active for years. Okay, so if we receive special offerings against one of those funds, it gets added to the total that's already been carried across the years. Any questions so far about the form? Okay, so this year, as Pastor mentioned, has been kind of extraordinary. The budget to date, August 31st, was $114,614. The actual receipts are less than that. If you go across, I'm sorry, the actual, I gotta back up a little bit. Okay, so the budget to date is 161,506, and the actual to date is 114,614. So we're running short of the budget year to date by about $47,000. That all shows across the top line. Looking down, if we want to look at the full fiscal year, the column right next to the bold dividing line, you'll see that there are positive values and negative values. That will show where that line item is expanded in relation to the budget. So anything in parentheses or red is overspent. Anything positive is underspent. You'll notice there's a number of lines that have no expense against them. For example, honorariums, church literature, prison ministry. Those are all have had no claims against those line items. And there are a few that are over by some amount. I can find, for example, the telephone. This is a good one. Line 508 down at the bottom of the page. That includes the internet service, and through the year, due to COVID, we set up an internet service over at the community center. So that was an unexpected expense. It's over by $847, and that's the story behind it. And as long as we're down in the 500, the 509 is the administrative expense. So also in response to COVID, we established a PayPal account and receive donations through that account. As part of that service, PayPal charges a certain percentage. I don't really remember what it is exactly right now, but that comes out of the administrative line, so that's over by $138. That administrative line also covers expenses like if checks are received that have insufficient funds, the bank charges us for that, and that comes out of that line as well. So just to summarize and do the treasurer thing, The balances in the left-hand corner as of October 31st for checking are $69,924.20. Savings is I can't see it, $590.54. So leaving us a total of $133,514.74 in our accounts. The designated funds that on the right-hand side, the grand total of those funds as of August 31st is 27,000. I think it's at 952. 50. Okay, what'd you say? 3. Okay, and so many cents. I think it's 82. Okay, where's my mic? Okay. So, any questions against the budget, specifically lines, questions with any of the items? Want to move on to the budget, proposed budget then? Okay. The second report is actually it's 2 pages, right? Yep, front and back. And we have last year's budget showing so we can compare to what we're doing this year. And the salaries, the 100s, I don't think we changed those at all. Those are carried over the same as they were last year. And down in the 200s, there have been a few changes. Maybe Pastor will talk about details in a little bit, but we had supported some missionaries last year that are no longer in doing their service, so that we've either discontinued. I think we've, like Wade and Argo, have been discontinued for the year going forward, and they were also discontinued partway through this year because they left the ministry there. So the thing about ministry expenses, there are 3, I'll call them classes of ministry expenses that are done by percentage. So take the 200s, for example. That's the World Missions offering. The total of our giving is 10% of our budget, our actual budget, over the year. And then for local missions, that amounts to 9%. And then I'm missing one. There's another one that is 3%, right? Yeah, okay, area ministries is 3%. So so the World Missions, the Cooperative Program, Annie Armstrong, and the missionaries that show up, which now are McGibbon and Global Link partners, that's Smart Gold. Just looking to highlight, okay, one other highlight about the change for this year is the kids ministry, line 245. In previous years, we've had, help me, there's like about 3 children's ministries. Awana, I think, was one. Release time, maybe?
Yeah, Awana, VBS, release time.
Okay, so those have been grouped into 245. Okay. So on the back page, we should see the bottom line is last year's, or the current fiscal year that we're in, that ends on September 30th. The budget was $176,188. This year, going forward into the new fiscal year, the target is $169,060. And that concludes my summary. Does anybody have questions on either of those documents? John?
Under kids ministry 245, you got $2,000. Did that show the $1,000 for the end of this budget year we're in? Is that
think it was slightly less, if I remember.
Yeah. So last year would have added up to 2350. So it represents a decrease of $350.
Total.
Yeah, we just combined it.
Yeah.
And part of that again is, we haven't done a lawn for the last year or two. VBS we didn't do last, and so trying to clean it up a little bit. And even this year, we had VBS, but we didn't spend all the money. I don't even know release time this year. So anyway, yeah, it represents a decrease of $350, but the goal was to kind of clean it up. And again, with everything, there's just a general uncertainty with most types of ministry at this point.
But at this point in time, the $2,000 will cover the three.
Yes, that's correct.
I was looking, if that's just 1,000, you might go up, and it might not have been enough. That is enough.
Other questions? Okay.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, and just a note, kind of on how we're doing this evening. I have ballots up here that I'll pass out at the end. There will also be a online link that we'll post to our Facebook page that allows people to vote online. I'll give this out at the end. You all can vote. You can give it to John Holmes tonight, or Michael's here, or Maria. You can give it to one of those three. I just ask that all ballots would be returned, within a week by next Sunday. I think that's what we did last year, just recognizing everything that's going on. So we'll continue then to move through.
One other question.
Sure.
Along with the budget, I think it just needs to be said that this budget is really a big faith budget. The only reason that it really can be proposed is the fact that you're going to draw down on the surplus in there. It's not like, we're doing great. We're really stepping out by faith in doing that,
Mhm.
because you only can go in the hole so long, if you want me to use that term.
Yeah, no, that's
Trying to do it in a positive way.
right.
A concern there, but a concern to be in prayer.
Right.
I don't think the budget was made on looking at going to surplus last year, every year, as far as how we spend money because of COVID within a year, and how we receive money because of COVID. It's basically, we kind of went back 2 years, what we had for a regular year budget, and tweaked that a little bit, believing that our giving will return what it normally would be as well. We're not looking at taking this and dipping into our reserves to meet this budget.
Well, yeah, and I would agree with that sentiment. This year, so the fiscal year that ends here in 10 or 11 days. At this point, at the end of August, we were, as Brian pointed out, about $13,000 negative for the year. So, there is the proposed budget, which is a set dollar amount. And then there is, what we actually spend. And we have been consistently spending way less than the budget says that we could. And the net result, like you see on this page there at the bottom, is a net loss this year of just under $13,000. And to John's point, that $13,000 does come then from our reserves, from our savings account. Now, I mean, you can look at this glass half full, glass half empty. The reality is we still have $133,000 in our bank account. So it's not like we're bouncing checks or whatever. But to John's point, yes, up to the end of August, so up to 3 weeks ago, we were $13,000 negative for the year, and that money would come out of our savings account. So in projecting or proposing this budget for the coming fiscal year, we just have to see how it goes. Yes, if the trend continues, theoretically, yeah, we probably could hit our savings pretty hard. We've tried to be judicious in terms of what we spend and not going crazy, but you're theoretically, I think, correct.
We could break down and pray. Right, Harold?
Oh,
That's all I.
right, no, right. Yeah, and I agree with you on that point. I just wanted to clarify, any other questions on that or thoughts on that?
The idea that we're switching from this month to the end of December for next year, right? That's what we're
Yeah,
kicking into gear too, right?
well, yes. Let's come back to that just because I want to try to maintain our order. But that wouldn't so much affect the bottom line, let's say. That's an accounting thing, and you prorate. But let's come back to that just so we can maintain the agenda on the green page. So budget proposal, Seth, I believe you're next. Youth ministry. It's just the baptism.
I thought it was pretty dramatic. So youth ministry this year was actually pretty cool, mainly because we got to have a youth ministry, and we actually got to see our students on a regular basis. So I'll just kind of give a summary of what I wrote earlier. We probably averaged 12 to 15 students on a regular evening. Mostly male, but a couple girls once in a while. We had a really good time, as you can probably assume. The sports were always really fun because guys tend to be very competitive with each other. And the girls that normally came, Savvy and Bailey, are also very competitive. So we always had a lot of fun. And having the group that we had, especially, I don't know, it worked out really well. Because they all kind of, even though we pull from a lot of different churches in some sense, we pull some homeschoolers and some kids from even different areas. It's really cool to see a bunch of different kids who don't all go to the same school and hang out together come to our youth group and all connect together. So it's been a really cool, really fun year. We weren't able to do some of the cooler big camps with the ABA this year, again, mostly because of COVID concerns and just practical things, how they would work out. So we didn't do that. For winter, we were able to go to the Mills Family Camp. They opened that up to us, and so we had a really good time there. Winter came, we were able to go to Word of Life, so we had a group of students, a group of guys, have a lot of fun there. What else? This year I tried to, mostly because a bunch of the concerns on where COVID was and where it was going and what was kind of possibly going to happen or possibly not going to happen, I wanted to focus more on I put in my head kind of like the quality of what we were doing, the quality of the teaching, the quality of the conversation and studying, more than trying to rally with big events and get a bunch of kids to come. More so, or in part because I wanted a good foundation group for the coming years, so that as we do try to spread out, as we do try to do bigger things and more people come, that is not just a youth pastor or a group of youth leaders that are trying to meet with and engage teens, but it's teens as well. So that was kind of our focus this past year. I think it kind of really took foot with our winter retreat. We talked a lot about the Bible and what it was, and specifically how to study it, and what prayer was, and what it is, and what it means to pray. And then the spring was probably like my favorite part of being up here as a youth pastor so far. We took basically 3 months, March, April, May, maybe into June a little bit, and I broke our group of 12 to 15 students down into like subgroups of 3 or 4, and I had each one of those groups lead the game time, the snack time, lead the Bible study lesson each week, and each group would rotate, and within each group, each person would rotate. So one person was responsible for figuring out and setting up the game. One was for figuring out the snacks. One was supposed to kind of spearhead the lesson. So giving them all a chance, in a sense, to do what I do every week, and organizing and leading the study. What I enjoyed so much was the ability to sit down with these smaller groups in my house, have a snack, and just work through a text together. Like asking all kinds of questions, and we were there sometimes for an hour, hour and a half, sometimes more, just trying to figure out what this particular text meant, what it was trying to show or to teach us, and how they were to, what kind of questions they could ask, what kind of things they could pull out, so that they could lead it when the time came. So it was so cool to be able to see students who, some of which I really had no idea if they really knew anything about the Bible, and some of them really honestly didn't know a whole lot, but through these studies, it wasn't just me sharing and teaching. It was they had to find the answers to the question themselves. They had to work out the problem, the confusing part of the text. I was just there to guide them along through it. So that was the highlight, I think, of this past year for me personally. And so they got to do that for a couple months, and then, of course, this past summer we kind of broke things down a little bit, had a little more fun. It was kind of an intense spring, so I wanted to kind of reward them with a fun summer in some sense. So we did a bunch of like grill outs and pool parties and other things. But that's kind of basically our year. I do want to say thank you to everybody who was giving and supportive and provided places for us to go, meals for us to eat, snacks, prayers, everything. It really was a great year. So that's it for youth ministry-wise. On a more personal side, on a personal note, as far as Jenny and I, 2 years ago, when we were kind of brought on board, we kind of handshaked deal that we would kind of be here for at least 2 years and kind of reevaluate, reassess kind of where we were and what we felt and what we thought. And so that's kind of been a question mulling around in our minds for the past 6 or 8 months or so. And where we are now, I don't think that we certainly have any intention in up and leaving. We love it here. We love our church family here. Jenny and I have said time and time again that we feel more like a church family here than we do back home, than we do in the churches that we even grew up in for years and years. So that's not anything to say about us, but I think that says a lot about you and how welcoming and loving you guys are as a church family. So we don't have any real intention of leaving until kind of God decides whatever might be next for us might happen. We kind of just leave that up to Him. But we really love it here. We really enjoy it here. On another thing, kind of along with that, we are actually in the process of buying a small fixer-upper, beater-upper house out in Malone. And this is more or less just to get ahead of the curve and any kind of like rumors or anything like that. We don't plan on moving and living in there. If you've seen it, you would be grateful. But we're doing it as a small project for us, and possibly using it as a future rental, or possibly to flip it and to sell it, or something along those lines. But just to get that out there so that nobody thinks some other random thing about it, or hears it in passing and wonder what in the world's going on. But thank you. Thank you for welcoming us. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for caring for us. That's all I got.
Thanks. Let me add something to what he said, and it was a question that was posed to me. So, as he mentioned, almost 2 years ago now, when we voted to bring him on board, and then they showed up, I think, in November. We said, that at a minimum, this is kind of a 2-year thing, and then we'll see where we go. So we are almost, as he said, at the end of that 2-year period. You heard his thoughts and his feelings. I can share mine, that I am just incredibly grateful for his presence, for his friendship, for his support, but just everything that he has done here. It's been a weird 2 years, and certainly a lot of the things that he ended up doing probably wasn't I know it wasn't what any of us thought when he got here. But as far as I'm concerned, he has been an invaluable, not resource, but just an invaluable presence here. You can see in the budget that is presented that we still have a salary and a housing allowance for him in there. And so I just want to be clear on that from my end, and I think I speak for the deacons when I say this, we are just incredibly glad that he's here, incredibly supportive of him being here. So I guess we'll just kind of leave it like, well, we've never had this thing where, we vote on the pastor or the assistant pastor on a yearly basis. I know some churches do that. That sounds absolutely dreadful to me. So I have no intention or desire to do that, but would simply say, again, there's some line items in the budget that include myself, but also include him. So I guess if you vote yes on the budget, you're voting yes to continue paying him for another year, just like you are for me. So that's just kind of a note in regards to where that's at. All right, use meeting report. Okay, ministry servant leaders. That should be the purplish page. Not many changes on there. You can see there's 2 blanks. One of those blanks is the Awana line. That's kind of residual. I feel like I've been saying this for the last year. I really continue to believe that we have a gap with kind of that, kindergarten, let's say, to 3rd or 4th grade kids. I want to and have every intention of doing something there. It just has been a weird season, kind of a struggle to actually make that happen. And part of that, as I say, we've been having discussions with Cheryl Saxon just regarding release time, and obviously with the school and everything else, and I don't even know if we're at a spot where we can do release time, and so it's like just trying to balance some of the realities of that. So I am content leaving that Awana line or that line blank. Like I said, it is something that I would that I want to do, that I want to at least be part of, and if I lead it, that's fine. But I'm just perfectly content leaving that one alone right now. Regarding the child care ministry team leader, she's here, so she can certainly speak for herself. I would simply note that Maria has stepped into that void, at least in an unofficial capacity. She's kind of taken it upon herself to work at remodeling the smaller of the 2 nursery rooms and procuring some things that she felt was needed. I was obviously in conversation with her and supported her in that, and kind of running with the idea or the thought that as a mother of young children, she is way more qualified than I am to determine what might be helpful, let's say, in that room. So I would love to put Maria's name there, but again, she's here. She can speak for herself in that regard. I don't think, as far as the other lines there, that anything has really changed. What's that?
I mean, obviously, I fixed up that while we're still in the process of getting some more pieces and things, but we definitely want it to be something that will be utilized because it wasn't before.
Mm-hmm.
So just working in the direction of making it more user friendly for moms with little babies because there's lots of noise.
Which is a good thing. Okay, any other questions on that or comments on the purple page? All right, so that takes us to, this one. We'll call it salmon colored. So this was something that was actually driven by the deacons. So I mean, I'll walk you through it, but they can comment or answer any questions. This is just kind of a weird thing. So the policy manual, the personnel column or piece of our policy manual, talks about how staff, which is mostly myself, get vacation time. I say, and it's not myself. Just I'm not trying to exclude Seth. There's nothing in there about part-time employees. Like, so I don't know. We take Seth's vacation on kind of a as it comes basis. This is something that actually goes back to Edwin. Edwin was always of the mindset, it's like, well, part-time, you are inherently more flexible just because of the nature of that. So anyway, this was particularly written for the pastor, for full-time staff, and it has to do with the amount of vacation or weeks of vacation, annual vacation, paid vacation. So you can see that the deacons worked through this and recommended some changes in that. It's pretty self-explanatory. You can read it. If there's any questions or comments on it, though, I would direct those to the deacons. Okay. Note that on the ballot, there's actually just two things on the ballot at this point. One is the budget, and one is the approval of the personnel policy. So you can vote on that. All right, the blue page. As Harold alluded to a few moments ago, again, this kind of came out of some conversations with Brian and with the deacons regarding both the fiscal year as well as the way that we kind of write our budget. So let me just take the fiscal year first. Right now, our church budget year, our fiscal year runs from October 1st through the end of the next September. So was it 30 days, half September? Does that sound about right? Something like that. So here our budget year ends September 30th, so what, 11 days from now. And then the next budget year starts on October 1st. All that we are proposing is that we change that so that the budget year lines up with the calendar year. In other words, the budget would begin on January 1st and it would end on December 31st. The reason, and I mentioned in this little write-up on the blue page, the reason is really twofold. On a personal level, it's easier for me to plan because I'm technically self-employed and I have to do all these fun things with taxes and all this. It's just easier if there's a budget amount instead of changing, like my salary getting changed, October 1st, or something in my compensation package gets changed October 1st, and then I have to, as we did last year, make some adjustments on the fly. So there's kind of that, I'll say, selfish reason for it. The other reason I would say is in terms of even some of the missionaries that we support, that it strikes me that it's helpful for them to know, okay, is my funding or whatever going to change on October 1st? Like, again, they're paying taxes on a yearly basis. And even some of those things with our giving, like what we give to the cooperative program and whatever, in my mind, it seems easier and cleaner if we line the budget and the calendar up. So that's the first one. The second part of that, if you turn back to the proposed budget, I think the gray sheet, you will notice, and Brian mentioned this, in the 200. So at line item 200, at line item 211, and then again at 220, you see a percentage in that line. There's a percentage given. So just for instance, look at 200. 200 is the World Missions Offering. Really, that's the money that we designate for world missions. And so what we say is we take 10% of the total budget amount, and we say, okay, we're going to give this to world missions. The cooperative program comes out of that, and then Annie Armstrong and Lottie Moon, and then some of the missionaries that we support. And that's how we've traditionally done it. And what we're proposing is that we get rid of that percentage, and we just put a dollar amount in those columns like we do everywhere else in the budget. The reason that we're proposing this is not because we're trying to cut back the amount of money that we give to missionaries or cut back the amount of money that we give to the cooperative program. What I've noticed over the last several years is that, quite honestly, I think we're shorting the cooperative program. So the cooperative program is what funds Southern Baptist missionaries. It also funds Southern Baptist universities and printing and books and all kinds of things. And I say we're shorting them because just look at this past year. So our budget for the year that ends here in 11 days was roughly $176,000. That's what our budget said on paper. The actual giving is going to be closer to $125,000, maybe $130,000. Well, as a percentage, you understand that 10% of 130 is a lot less than 10% of 170. So while the budget last year said that we were going to give the cooperative program $9,318.84, I will tell you that the actual number will be way, 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 way less than that, because all of these 202, 203, 205, 206, 207, and 209, these numbers that are set amounts, they will automatically come out of that 10%, and then cooperative program gets whatever's left. So in years past, when our giving exceeded our budget, that meant that cooperative program got more than we thought that we were going to give them. In the last 2 years, when we've been under budget, what that means is that the cooperative program has gotten way less than it would appear on paper that we're doing. And so, again, the reason for changing is would rather have a dollar amount, both so that we're actually giving what we want to give them, but also, I guess, in just a cursory glance at this, dishonest is probably is too strong of a word, and certainly too negative a word, but it could be a bit misleading. Like if I was to ask you last year or this year in our budget how much money we were going to give the cooperative program, well, you would rightly say, well, $9,300, $9,318, whatever it is. That's not going to be true. The number maybe will be half of that this year. And so I think it makes kind of an awkward projection on the Bible. So I understand the intent, or the budget. I understand the intent, but again, the proposal coming from myself and from the deacons is that we get rid of the actual percentages and assign a real dollar amount. Questions, comments on either one of those two things? Yeah.
Are we going to, on September 30th next year, run October 1st, run a 4-month budget?
Yeah, I'm sorry. That's a good question. So the question is, next year, if we move to align our budget year with the calendar year, what do we do for those 3 months? And thank you for bringing it up. I meant to say that earlier. The thought was that we would essentially prorate this 21-22 budget, divide by 12, multiply by 3, and prorate that out for October, November, and December of 2022. And then start with the next full year budget January 1st of 2023.
Meeting
Yeah, to do that, yes, we would have to have a meeting probably about this time next year. And we could present the budget, we'd have to vote to accept, yeah, we're just gonna extend this, prorate this budget for 3 months, and then at the same time, we could adopt a new budget, let's say, that started on December 1st. But yes, that would, in my mind, require a meeting, again, about a year from now. I mean, last year, I think the meeting was on the 20th, today's the 19th, so we're consistent, if nothing else. Yeah, where we, again, just prorate it out for 3 months and then start a new budget on January 1st. But yeah, thank you for asking. That's a good question. Other questions or comments on either one of those?
As far as the 10% world missions, originally when that started, that was all went to world missions. And you can look at that saying if you're down a year, it's going to be less, but you still report what you pay. So I don't see how that's being crooked.
No, and that's why I said it's too strong to say that it's crooked. I think it's difficult to understand, and it could be easily misread, to assume that, oh, we're giving the cooperative program $9,300 this year.
But in those over years, which this new budget projects right now that we probably have to dip into, the savings already has a cooperative program paid out.
I didn't follow that.
Any surplus goes into the savings account of each year. The 10% is on receipts, and if you receive more than budget, that does go up, which means there's additional money that wouldn't have been in the savings account that has your giving other than local missions.
Yeah, and in past years when there has been a budget surplus, Brian can answer this, but I'm going to guess that the 10% was taken out of the surplus number as well, not just whatever the budget called for. Is that accurate? Okay.
10% is given on receipts, right, Brian? Yes. Yeah. And a lot of the money that wasn't spent that shows a surplus would have already had that taken out. And it's over either in the checking account or in the savings account.
Well, no, I think that money would have been dispersed. I mean, whatever the overage was. So in past years, again, I think we would have given more to the cooperative program than what the budget actually, whatever number was on the budget. Yeah.
That just counters yours that when it's under, then it goes the other way.
Oh, yeah. No, oh,
It's on receipts. Whether
that's
it's
correct.
under,
That's correct.
it averages out when God calls us home.
That's, and yeah, hopefully.
That's the other thing, I really don't like to see a real big savings account, because when God calls us home, the Antichrist will have his fingers in that money. Some way. I haven't figured out how to protect us from that.
I'm sure that Uncle Sam will help himself, since they're not good with budgets either. So.
I'm thinking this, if you have a set dollar amount, I think we need to challenge the people to give up and above for such that. To give to those, to the, like, the 2 or 3, what?
Special offering?
Yeah,
The special offerings.
The,
Yeah, and I don't.
we're
Yeah.
gonna have this come out of the budget, but challenge.
Well, and I'm not saying that I want to take the cooperative program out. I'm saying I want to assign a real number to the cooperative program and say, we're committing.
Challenge people to give.
Sure, but we're going to commit as a church to give this amount, and then challenge them through Lottie Moon and Annie Armstrong to give above that amount.
The other benefit to having percentages in when you have a down year, it automatically compensates for the fact that you're having a down year. And it makes it
And I recognize that. I do. Anything else on that? Okay. John and Michael, is this, well, and even John Edwards, you've been here, I think it's fair to ask you this question. Is that, in your mind, is that something that we should vote on? You know, these changes, go ahead and implement them, or is that something that we should vote on? The budget's not till next year, so I'm not worried about that. But changing the way that we write the budget, I didn't think that was something that we had to vote on. But the aligning the fiscal year with the calendar year, I think that's next year.
I think that originally is the way it was. I'm trying to think of when it was changed the other way.
Okay.
In fact, when we used to have the two meetings, one was kind of, we had the budget, and the first one had to do with the calendar. And
Right.
well, maybe
More personnel. I thought it was more personnel. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right, moving on then. That was blue. So the orange page, you see the calendar there. I trust that y'all can read. So I'm not going to go through that. I will say that we're working on a couple other things that will pop up, but that's an overview. The other thing that is listed on the agenda, although there's not actually a page for it, a paper for it, is what's called a building update. You notice in the minutes that we read at the beginning that the minutes talked about how we were going to do some work on the roof. That work was done last fall, so it must have been after the meeting, so I'm going for October sometime. But we did do quite a bit of work on the roof of this back part. So at this point, the only part of the church building that does not have a new roof on it is the south end, if you will, of the fellowship hall. And the reason for that is because there's kind of an ongoing discussion in terms of what we do with that. Before we put a roof on, I'll just share the thought. This isn't official, but it's a thought. The thought is that we at least kind of square off that fellowship hall and get, which would enlarge it a little bit before we go and put a new roof on it. So that's why we've kind of paused. But again, the only part of the building that does not have a new roof is the south end of the fellowship hall. Other things regarding the building that have been done, and you can see the building fund line item. I think we abused that one pretty good this year. But over the last few months, I haven't personally, but Michael and Jay Childs and Tommy Bogart, I think we've installed 4 new windows at this point. So 2 in the big nursery, 1 in the smaller nursery room, and then 1 in the kitchen. I'm not missing one, am I? Okay. So there's 4 new windows. And then a couple weeks ago, Tommy Bogart and a bunch of other people put foam board on that western wall there, and put foam board in, and we got some siding and put new siding on it. So there has been a reasonable amount of work done to the building. There is, let's say, a reasonable amount of more work that needs to be done to the building. We still have 1 window left that we had bought, and just continue to talk about replacing all of the windows kind of around really around the offices. So my office and Maria's office and Seth's office. We've been kind of talking about and trying to figure out, okay, what kind of windows and what are the best windows to put there. But I think going forward, that is at a minimum, that's the plan, that we're going to continue to replace those windows. And then as soon as we replace the windows, we'll tear the old siding off, that old cardboard siding off, put the foam board and new siding on. So we're kind of taking this a section at a time, and working around and doing that. Like I mentioned about the fellowship hall, that roof needs completed. I think those are the big things. Obviously, there's some smaller things. There's still some painting that needs to be done outside, and the back door, that sill is just needs to be replaced. So just know that those are some of the things that we've done. What else? Obviously, this room was repainted in the past year. John Edwards and Jay Childs. John actually deserves a ton of credit. He came back from Florida, and instead of sugaring this year, he rebuilt our stage. So not only did he rebuild it, but he donated a lot of the materials. So a huge shout out to him. So obviously the stage is different. We repainted. John Holmes and his wife have done a ton of work over at the Hope Center, a lot of painting over there as well. So just know that we continue to not just maintain the buildings, but trying to improve them a little bit kind of at a time. So there's not a massive building project, but we have, I think, done a fairly good job over the last year of kind of working at some of the stuff that needs addressed. While we're talking about buildings, I will point out this, just so it's in the record. Seth's house, the parsonage, that roof, it appears that, the 25-year warranted shingles are probably on their 30th year or so. So just know that at some point that is, there's some, what's that? Yeah, that is something that's going to need addressed, and that's a bigger type something that obviously you kind of have to do all at once. So that may be, well, probably not this fall, but we got a limb. It's one of those things that should be done in the next year. Our insurance agent is, they just get grumpy. That's the bottom line. They get grumpy about things like that and tell us how they're not going to pay if something happens. So, but I joke. All jokes aside, it really is a stewardship issue, and certainly we're aware of that. So, that's everything on the green sheet on the agenda. Other new business for tonight. Okay, I have ballots up here. There's 2 questions on them. So please take one of these. If you want to think about it and pray about it, go for it, but I'd like them back by next week. Otherwise, you can fill them out. Like I mentioned at the outset, Maria has posted an online ballot that should be linked on our Facebook page. So you can vote on there as well. And again, it should be these same 2 questions. We'll just ask if you're going to do that you do that in the next 7 days. That's all I got. I think by general consent, we will adjourn. And if I may ask John Edwards if you would pray for us. And I liked your suggestion, pray specifically even for the budget and just looking ahead in faith. If you could do that, please.
Father, we just thank you that you allow us to be a part of your work here in the North Country, in the Russian area. Father, we just pray that you continue to guide us. We're not through the new year. We're just starting it. Father, we just pray that it would be a great year. We give you all the glory for what is going to happen in this new year. And Father, we just pray that you guide and direct each of the areas. And Father, we pray a special direction upon the money that you have provided for us and the way that we use it. Father, we leave that in your hands and pray that you guide us day by day. We look for your presence. And Father, we just pray you be with each one here as we go from this place and those that are going to be watching. And Father, we just pray that there be a oneness in your word this year. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Please come get a ballot. Again, Maria is usually the one that ultimately counts them. You can give those to her or certainly one of the deacons is appropriate as well.